Well, you're just in time to see me do an 8-way hand-tied coil spring here at Upholstery on Broadway. What a great opportunity. Well, we have 4 springs in this Victorian chair. As you can see, this is a great reproduction from about 1865. Copper springs, another indication of how old this is. The very first job is to make sure that you put these springs in, first of all, the right side up. As you see, there's usually a little dip in the spring. That's what goes on the top. Not a dip goes on the bottom. The other thing for placement purposes is to make sure that the opening here is towards the inner side of the chair. That's for the in case you know, there's slippage in the front and wear. It's a wear factor. So you want to make sure it's very important. The placement's very important. So we're going to put these 4 springs on, copper springs. Make sure they're all going in the right direction and all going in, as you can see. Now we have a little contraption called a clinch-it. Clinch-its have been around for about 90 years in the upholstery world. Believe me, that's a cutting-edge tool for this business. What you want to do is place the clinch-its are supposed to be gravity fed, and they never are though. You always have to work them down. They're very sharp. You wouldn't want to get your finger anywhere near these. They're crescent moon shape on the bottom that goes over the spring. You pull the trigger and it locks the spring. So we're just going to do that. We are going to put 3 in each one, but for now we're going to anchor it down with 1 so as that they don't fall on one another. We can go back and fill in. You know, I'm putting a good amount of pressure, and you can hear it pop when it goes through. You know you're right on there. So that's 3 on that one. 3 on that one. At least 3 clinch-its per spring. Now that one misfired, so I'm going to have to do another one there. And the last spring gets 3 more. And we're done with that application. The next step would be to prep with your 12-ounce tacks, also called webbing tacks. We're going to 2 tacks per row of springs. As you can see, we're not going to put them in all the way. Now in the old days we used to spit tacks. Today, I'm afraid, since the loss of a molar, I don't spit tacks anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to put these tacks in about 1 inch apart at each row of springs. This is a row of springs. This is a row of springs. So we're going to get a couple of tacks there. Notice how I'm not all the way in, but I'm in enough so that if you wrap a twine around that, the twine's not going to pop the tack up. Okay, now notice what I do on the back. Make a small adjustment. I'm actually going to take the tack and angle it. You could use the magnetic end of your hammer. And we're going to angle it because we have to follow through with some heavy tacking, and we don't want to hit the top finished rail. So they all don't go in straight. You angle them where there's a rail on the top. And now we're even going to prep up the sides. Now we are prepping up right now a 4-way tie. We'll get to the 8-way later. Now sometimes you have a situation where you can't get in the middle of a row of springs. So what you do is you simply just go to the side, and you can be off-centered just a little bit. Okay, and I have more tacks on the other side, and then we're done with the tack preparation. We can go right to the spring tying. So now the next step is that we're going to be tying springs. Some people might have heard of an 8-way hand-tied coil spring. That's what I'm about to show you. But materials are important here too, the right materials. What we use is a ruby spring twine. This is a great Italian-made jute twine. It's specifically made for these springs. And now we're just going to drop that on the floor. And what we're going to do to measure it, we do have to pre-cut these before we tie. So we're going to go over the top of the springs 1, 2, 3.5. That's usually the right way, unless you're tying a wire edge seat, and that's a different program altogether. But anyhow, now that we have this 3.5 times over the top, we're going to take about a 24 or 30-inch section of twine, and we're going to let it fall like so. And then what we're going to do is make what I call eyeglasses up at the top. You can see we're going to loop those around the back. You always start at the back rail. It's a lot easier starting from the back to the front. So we have the loop. Now we're going to loop it right over the tacks that have been put in there about halfway, enough so that when I pull, they're not going to undo. Now notice the angle. That's very important. The angle is there. So now I'm going to just go over here and set those tacks. Now notice how I'm holding tight. Use the hammer end of your magnetic tack, folks. If you use your magnetic end for hammering, you will break the magnet, okay? Tapping is okay on that end. Now what we're going to do to start, we cannot start up at the top rung. We're going to start at the second rung. It's all for leverage purposes. If you start at the top rung, you're going to tilt the spring in an unnatural way, and we're trying to look for a natural, ultimately, we're looking for a naturally crowned seat, especially on a Victorian side chair. It's very important. And what we're going to do is we're going to loop this. Now this is important. We're going to show you how to tie these springs tight. So when you get down here, we pull the whole row and they're all tight straight up. Now I just looped this. I'm going to show you that again, and I'm going to go slower. Okay, I just loop. It's not a knot yet. It's just a loop. Okay, now what that does is it loosens, you can slide the spring along. And for a beginner, I recommend that you tighten this up with your right hand if you're a right-handed person, and then stretch that back, tighten it back, and then look straight down. It's almost like a tunnel. And then you have to hold this, and then you have to tie. That can be tricky. But just any old knot, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to slow the knot down for the next one, because the points here is not as important to get to measure the knot where the knot goes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm really going to slow down my knot just to show you guys at home how to do this, or at least how I do it. Of course, from here, as long as you're holding this, if you want to do any knot you want. But what I do is I work close, and look, I'm under, and then I'm going to go through. Okay. Now, this is the important part. Notice how I'm up at the top rung. So you start at the second rung, top rung. This is the top rung. Very important knot, because once you tighten it, see how tilted that is? That would be an example of how wrong you could be with this, okay? So what we're trying to do is gauge where that knot goes. So what I'm going to do is, because we have it looped, this is the great beginner's trick, okay? Look, you can even exaggerate it here, as long as you have this tight, and then work it back. And then you're looking straight down. You have to hold that, and I'll really slow it up, because you let go of that at the last possible second, because you're creating a knot right where you've gauged it to be, there. And now we're coming down to the second rung. Looping it. We're going to knot it. And then what we're going to do is, notice I'm a right-handed person, but I'm taking my right hand and I'm going to be wrapping this with my left two fingers. Look, I'm pulling this, and that's perfect. It's tight. The springs are up. Don't worry about this right now, because we're going to take care of that tilt later. But I'm looking at this tilt. This is really good. Okay, now what I'm going to do is get my hammer, which I've put over here. And now notice the direction that I'm going to tack this in. I'm not tacking it here, but I'm going to be going to this tack. So I'm going to cross this way, and then I'm going to wrap this way, and now I tack. The reason that's important is because you don't want this tacked over here and then have it cross over the head of the tack. You create an unnecessary wear on the twine. Okay, so that's one step. Now what we're going to do is show you what to do with the small twines. The small twines I call backup twines. This really helps the main twine. Okay, and it also does another thing very important. It takes the edge of the spring without tilting the back part of it, and that starting to create your crown. Okay, the edges should be crowned. Okay, now watch what I do. I'm actually physically trying to tie these two together, these two rungs together. Okay, I'm going to get a knot there. Then I'm going to run continuous loops, almost like a hangman's loose. This is all in order to get the strongest possible hand-tied seat that we can get. Now, when I get to this point, I'm actually going to get a knot, and I'm going to take an extra step, and I'm going to get an extra tack. Now you can use a smaller tack for this, but I like getting an extra tack. I go right through. You can actually, put your thumb this through. Of course, a smaller tack would be good too. And what that does is it prevents this from riding up. That'll last a good long time, especially the front part. So the front part is where most of the wear is going to be received over the years. Okay, now we just completed the four-way hand-tied coil springs. Now for some upholsterers this would be enough, but for extra support you should do an 8-way. That means that each spring gets a tie. So right now we count 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're filling in the pie, so to speak, with 5, 6, 7, and 8. So another thing that we do sometimes as professional upholsterers, because we want to try to save the frame of the chair from heavy tacking, and believe me, there's a lot of heavy tacking in here, is that we use staples. I mean, it's okay to staple one end down, and we cut down on the length of the twine too, because these are backup twines, so we don't really need all the extra double twining here that we did. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to try to fill this one in with 6 ties. We're going to come up here. Now another thing that we can do is tighten things up like this with these backup twines, which actually adds to a better seat, a more overall balanced seat. So I'm going to hold that, I'm going to tie that, and then you can tie over these. I guess the rule of thumb is that if you're tying over, don't tie it. You know, don't tie over something without tying it. Okay? And we're going to come down here. Now, for people who don't have a pneumatic staple gun, you can just tack this. You can get a tack halfway in here and wrap that twine around. But you only need about 2.5 times or 2 times the distance here on this twine. So what we're going to do is just staple, and then fold it over. Okay? Now we just happen to have another twine all set up here, so what we're going to do is come right up to the top twine. Notice how we're not coming down to the bottom twine, the second rung from the top, because these are the 8-way tie. This is going to finish this spring up as an 8-way tie. And now look, we got 7, and I'm going to tie this baby off too. And look at this. This is going to finish the 8-way tied spring. How's that? Now I'm just finishing up the 8-way tie seat. Isn't that lovely to look at? And let me tell you something, a properly done 8-way tied seat on any piece of furniture will last 3 or 4 upholsterings. That's right, that's at least 80 or 90 years. I've actually seen this method last up to 150 years. So I'm just going to clip up here, and that just finishes it. And I really want to thank you for visiting Upholstery on Broadway, and with me, Kevin Kennedy, your host. Thank you very much.